Hi, morning, Adam. How are you this morning?
Morning, Chris. Yeah, very good. Thank you. You?
Yeah, good form. Thanks very much. You must be looking forward to starting back now because as a young business, you were making great traction before lockdown. It must have been quite a frustrating period the last few months.
Yeah, I mean, for myself and my business partner, Barry Vera, we've been on quite a journey, to get this to where it was. And, we keep saying this is going to be our year. And we just sort of hit that nice little, I'll use the unfortunate word spike, in terms of going into the right year. And yeah, boom, lockdown hit us. But, I think, I'm one of hundreds and thousands of people out there under the same issue. I think it's hit us all for six pretty quickly, to be honest.
And how do you think things are going to be as we re-emerge? Because actually hotels are going to have to get their service offerings right, aren't they?
Yes. And it's very interesting actually, because in the early days, the hotels we were talking to, very, very much focused on, and absolutely correctly, in terms of getting the customer's journey from a safety perspective absolutely spot on from the minute they enter the door to they go to the bedroom. And then we've been working with quite a lot of them in terms of how they can then get food and beverage, because there's still some uncertainty in terms of whether people are going to turn up and just spend one night in a room or 2 nights in a room. And when they turn up, are they just going to go to the room and stay there and not be seen again and do whatever they need to do in terms of visiting friends and family, or if it's work, or are they going to enter the hotel and expect the normal hotel operations to be open? So we've had to adapt our own policies, procedures, which we've been writing over the last umpteen months, and we've come up with some new bits and pieces to make sure that we can give a good food and beverage operation throughout the day and evening.
And it's interesting for you because you're actually operating literally almost right across the country, aren't you? From London, you've got operation in London, you've opened?
Yeah, so we're
right up to the north.
Correct. So we're due to open in London. We're opening. We're literally in the middle of all this. Whether it's mad or not, I don't know, because we decided to take on a refit of a hotel as well, which has had its own issues, because you think of the refit that this is the best time to do it because the place is closed and you can go in and do what you need to do. But actually, what the fitter has been struggling with is not so much being able to plan it and organise it. It's more about getting the people coming back off furlough, the builders in, and actually the suppliers. And as we've been going through some of this, some of his suppliers that he's been using have literally gone under as they've been going through. So he's had to change suppliers and get the same goods that we've been promised. But that in itself has given us a bit of an issue. But we're looking at major cities, so Newcastle, Liverpool. We got our fingers at the moment in some bits and pieces down in Brighton, which we're getting quite excited about. And on top of that, we're also looking at some opportunities overseas at the moment, certainly in Europe, which have come across. So we're sort of spanning nicely. We're not going to rush and take everything, but we're certainly looking at the opportunities as they arise now.
Now, what do you think is going to be really important from the customer's point of view to get them back into hotels and eating?
Safety will have to come first. I think anyone going into any hotel will want to know that it's a safe environment. I'm seriously hoping, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, I look back to the old days of years and years ago when, people went to a Trust House 40 hotel because they believed it to be a safe environment to go and eat and dine in, and they weren't residents. It was, so I'm hoping we're going to get back to that. I think, they're going to want to know that all the procedures have been put in place, that the staff and everyone around are taking it seriously and managing it appropriately. But I'm hoping as well that they're going to want to use the facilities for what the facilities are. I'm in our market as being outsourced F&B, we're really on the edge of not, we don't want people just to see these concrete blocks as sort of bed factories, because that'll be no good to anybody.
No, I think it's, and obviously the most controversial piece at the moment, or difficult piece, is the M&E piece, isn't it? Meetings and events.
Well, you know, and it's going to be difficult. I think, you know, in one of our properties, we manage the whole lot, which makes it a lot easier. And that, you know, that hotel group of, you know, entrusted us to make sure that we're putting in the safety practices, and that we're going to drive that business to the best of the knowledge that we can. And then in the other properties we're looking after, they actually drive it. So it's a sort of a joined up approach. I think where we come at it from, where we look after it, we're actually thinking completely different at the moment in terms of driving that M&E business, because it's not going to be the same as what it was 8 months ago. And if people go after that same market, they're going to fall over. They get bookings, I'm sure, but the bookings are going to be few and far between. I think the agents, the middleman, you know, the risk sits for them as well. They're going to want to make sure that everything is absolutely clean cut, and we're seeing you know, we're trying to target some different use of the rooms. So, you know, private dining, you know, families of, you know, that can now come together, 10s and 12s and 20s. Why not get them in a room, because they spend just as much during the day and enjoy it and have a bit of fun. So we're trying to think more out of the box in terms of the usage of what that needs. You still have a corporate market, but I think the corporate market is going to, personally, I think it's going to be a bit slow to come back fully. I think if you look at London, you know, from our understanding at the moment, you know, a lot of the city operations, you know, the lawyers and the bankers aren't even thinking about going back until late September. So
well, even later.
Yeah. And I think, you know, us doing this Zoom, you know, as much as everyone's probably zoomed out at the moment because it's every day, I think this is now going to be every day. You know, the need of getting on a train an hour away into London to sit behind a desk to do 2 or 3 meetings, when you can get up in the morning and do the same meeting, have the same conversations. You lose the personal interaction, admittedly, but you still get the work done. I think a lot of employers will probably encourage a bit more of that, unfortunately.
How about you? How's it impacted on you this period?
Personally, or?
Yeah, because I mean, it's very hard to be setting up a business, trying to do all that, and then this happened.
Well, I'm not going to say it's been easy, and I think I think, you know, because you've been at the end of my tongue a few times when I've gone off on one, but it's
daily, you mean? Sorry.
You know, yeah, we've had some black times and very dark times, and times where you've really sort of sat down and thought, God, why am I doing this? You know, it's almost, you almost think it's the wrong time to do it, but actually inside me at the moment, something's telling me it's the right time to do it. You know, it's actually allowed us to be a little bit more focused. We've managed to plan it a lot better. We've, you know, it's not stopped us getting investment, and we've managed to get some of that in. We've also been very astute with some of the landlords that we've been working with, and actually now, you know, I'll give you an example. So, you know, 2 years ago, we were looking at, you know, some pretty big properties with some very big rents. You know, if any one of those, if we'd taken, we probably would have been under today, because you just couldn't afford that rent, purely because of the footfall that wouldn't be going through those places. And interestingly, only last week, you know, you know, a couple of agents phoned me about 2 or 3 properties, and there's still some landlords expecting some seriously stupid rents for something out there. And, you know, they're trying to throw in a few little incentives to get you over the line. But I just don't think people will take it. But then on the other hand, you've got some great landlords at the moment that are actually seeing this as a, God, you know, I've got to get through the next 3 to 5 years. What do? Do I change my model and try and get someone or something in to help me do that and get through this? Or do I stick to my guns and say I've got to get £1 million and never get £1 million rent? So for us, we've sat and worked on the opportunities, and certainly if I look at, because our main focus is hotels, it's been reasonably difficult to get into that hotel sector doing outsourced food and beverage, and I say this as I have done on a few of your talks, Chris. You know, and I'm not being rude to hoteliers, but you know, in some cases, they believe they can do the food and beverage better. And it's not just about putting a plate of food out onto a table or putting a breakfast menu together. It's, you know, you've got to come up with an experience. And for me, I think what we've seen through lockdown is a slight change in attitude with hoteliers now looking to de-risk certain elements of their business. And obviously, you know, 2 or 3 of the obvious are housekeeping, food and beverage, so on and so forth, concierge, you know. So I think more and more will start talking, and I think you may start seeing a few more players like ourselves come into that hotel market. What we're creating is some brands that sit behind us at the moment that we can, you know, help us push that a little bit further. We actually create brands individually for hotels as well to make sure that hotel market is quite diverse. And it's in our interest. You know, our interest is to drive that footfall, to drive that spend. And when you've got someone over that, concentrating on that on a daily basis, it makes a big difference. You know, we don't just put a menu on a table and expect it to talk to the customer. There's a difference.
I think that's one of the interesting things about you. You do love that customer experience, don't you? You love managing that customer journey. That's what gives you a buzz.
Yeah, I mean, look, you asked me what was the worst bit about lockdown for me personally. Personally, for me, I've had to talk to people through this, you know, and it's just not me, you know. I love that whole personal bit of a team and working with them, and you know, it's helped and it's been very good for me. And actually, I've missed the interaction personally of you know, some of the thoughts and ideas we've got and actually building. We were just starting to build something in Manchester when, you know, bang, lockdown came and we had to stop it. And we were just starting to go over that sort of curve. And for me personally, I do miss that. I miss that because I suppose I'm quite fortunate as well with Barry. The pair of us see things slightly differently, but also in our business, we can change it tomorrow. If it's not working today, I haven't got a juggernaut to turn around. I haven't got to think about, well, that's going to, you know, cost millions because we've got to reprint everything. If it's not right, we change it, and we can make those life-changing sort of decisions quickly.
Now, you've been a chief executive for a whole range of different companies over the years, often backed by VCs or large companies. What's it like doing your own business? How's that journey been?
Look, it's tough. I think if anyone says it's not tough, I think they're lying. You know, you saw what I went through in the early days. You have ups and downs, and you think you're getting there and you're not getting there. When you're backed by someone with a VC behind you, quite a big VC, and I've been quite fortunate in the last umpteen roles. I've had some very good VCs. Excuse me. You're managing their money. You're managing that to a possible outcome, because you know when you're working for a VC, you're on a 3 to 5 year sort of term. That's life. You know, they're not in the game for 10 to 20 years. It just doesn't happen. I think when you suddenly give that card in and then you say, I'm going to go and do it myself, you're dealing with your own money. And you know what's made it great for us today, but really bad for us at the beginning, is I think, you know, we started this with no money. You know, we literally had to use our own savings, our own bits and pieces that we got. Both Barry and I ploughed a fair bit into it. You know, while I was out doing some consulting, Barry was out doing chefing gigs himself so that we could get some money and turnover in. So we were sort of flighting between night and weekends to try and keep Paragon going. And you know, I'll tell you, there was certain weeks when we were both throwing the towels in because we just couldn't see the light in the tunnel. But we're nearly 3 years on, and you know, it's good. It's a outwith of lockdown. You know, if lockdown wasn't happening today as it is, the platform that we've got is fantastic. You know, we've achieved quite a bit in a very small amount of time.
Now, lots of people know you, but they don't really know you. I think that's sort of how I always view it. Because actually,
You're not going to be rude now, are you?
No. All right. Yeah. But you go back, because you've got a whole variety of experience, going back to Jim Thompsons, for those who remember Jim Thompsons back in. Do you want to talk a bit about that? Because that was quite, at the time, was quite revolutionary.
I love Jim Thompsons. Jim Thompsons was a Thai brand, which I always tell the very quick story. It was very difficult for me to manage in the early days because the owner of it, it was owned by Robert Breer, who was a big character then in the city. He'd managed to get a lot of funds from Bots Bank. He also managed to pull Bots Bank down as well at the same time. But he got a lot of money, and he bought loads of pubs and he bought lots of businesses. And he happened to buy into Jim Thompsons, which then was owned by Tony Carson, which just happened to be the son of Frank Carson. So every time I used to sit in the meetings, not to shout out, "Oh, it's a cracker," it was very difficult. But Tony had this, he'd been over to Thailand, he'd seen the way the Thais eat, he thought it was great, and he decided to come over. And his view was, if I took an old pub over, I could literally deck it out with the Thai furniture that I'm seeing over there that I'm buying for 50p. I could do a really cheap, sort of good Thai restaurant and see how it goes. And you know what? He made it. But, in those days, he worked it. He was in the sites, he was doing it, he was delivering it. And it was very music led. And, he built a pretty good brand. He had about 3 or 4, they sold them. I joined them at the time. We took the 4 to nearly 15 across the UK. Admittedly, in those days, we moved to Manchester, and we took a site, the old Revolution Bar, just down the back of Deansgate, and we spent a lot of money converting this place for a Thai restaurant. And I remember Kevin Bacon, who was around the side with Living Ventures, came round, and we were having a little drink, and he wished me the best of luck because I wouldn't be there after about 6 months.
That's encouraging.
And do you know what? He was right. I think we did about a year, and then we had to pull out because we took Thai food to Manchester at the time when Thai food just wasn't even seen. It wasn't even heard of. We were too far advanced. And it was just a shame. But you look now, everywhere's got Thai food and Chinese food and Cantonese food, and it's done. And it was a really good concept. If you had your time again, you'd go back and you'd stick with it and roll it out and move it into different areas and make it a bit smaller and put it into food courts and all that. You could even go and put it into stadiums. Hindsight's great, isn't it? It really is.
Well, it's amazing how things have evolved, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the other job, which I always think you really did enjoy, was as chief executive of the One Group for Europe and Middle East.
Loved it. I mean, it was some might say, well, why would you put an old boy in charge of such a young brand? But it made me feel young. Let's put it that way. I mean, look, it was just great. And the owner, Jonathan Siegel, of that, what a mastermind in terms of how he thought about how a restaurant should operate. What was in his head was just unbelievable in terms of, total respect for the guy, in terms of, where the bar's positioned, exactly where the seating should be put, where the carpet should be against the hard flooring. The detail was immense in terms of how he wanted the flow to go and so on and so forth. I think the issue for us was, which he allowed me to expand on. I took over the UK and Europe when the UK was being driven by the States, and of course, marketing elements in the States don't naturally market well in the UK, and I think that's why they were struggling. I say struggle. We were, I'm not to say the figures, but in terms of turnover in the UK, it was huge, absolutely huge. And we pushed it out a little bit, to go and do the outsourcing food for the Hippodrome Casino, 24 hours, with umpteen restaurants and bars and daily sort of table service, you name it. Fantastic. And then we took it out to market through the early stages of the first franchise, which they'd done in Ibiza, and then we took it out to Dubai and Doha and so on and so forth. And the guy out there, Paul Evans in Dubai at the moment that I did the deal with, is still running 2 SDKs and doing them very popular. I'm glad to say that I just saw that they've gone back to opening the Dubai ones as of this weekend. So he's pretty happy as well, and he's gone back out there. But it's a good, lively brand, but a brand that you could have a few more legs elsewhere on.
Yeah. And now your aspirations for the future? What do you hope? How do you see the next couple of years panning out for you?
Well, I was looking forward to just sitting on the beach, but that's not going to happen.
You'll never do that anyway, to be fair.
No, I always say I need a rest. And then once I've had a rest, I get very bored and I want to get back to something.
Yeah,
and that's it. Look, I want to see this through. This has been really good. That the team that I've managed to put around me have been absolutely fantastic. A lot of them have had to work remotely on other projects, part-time, you name it, but they've been great. And they're all, sitting on the edge at the moment saying, "Oh, when's the next one going to happen?" And then we can get cracking. I think, for me, I'd like to personally see that Paragon Hospitality in its full light of what we do gets to a nice sized business. This isn't going to be, we're certainly not wanting this to be a massive overstretched business in any shape or form. Because I think then you'll lose the personality. We're back to where I like being, which is, years and years and years ago. It's Barry and I that are seeing the clients. We're doing the tender, we're doing the process. They don't see anybody else; they just see us. And when a decision has to be made, we make it. We don't have to say, "Let's go and have a chat about that."
Well, I suppose at least an obvious question to ask you is: when you were working for corporates, did you feel slightly out of place then?
Well, they never liked my dress sense. Let's put it that way.
Well, there's a reason for that.
I probably did, Chris, but I probably didn't know it until I went and worked with the VCs. I think the VCs for me, just opened. You become a completely different person, and you are. If you're quite creative and entrepreneurial, and you can't be too risk adverse. You've got to be able to take a few risks to try and build something to see that it comes through. And even, and I know for a fact, some people may question some of the risks that were taken probably in the early days of Lindley's. But if you look back to that, those risks were taken with an end purpose, and the end purpose got everyone that sat around that board table what they wanted. So there was always a goal there to be had, and there's a path. And I think there's always a place for corporates. And I think, if you're, I'm too maverick now to,
Did you say now?
Maybe I've been too maverick. I mean, I don't know how some of the people have put up with me, to be honest. I mean, and I've total respect to all of them out there. But I think, for me, it's I like doing this now. I like, it has been tough, and it has pulled your hair out, and it has made you almost want to cry some nights because of what's going on. And you're thinking about money and cash and people and everything that in the corporate world you don't really think about, because you've got departments thinking about that. And those departments, I'm sure,
Yeah, look, we've known each other for many years, and I think that's the really interesting thing about watching what you've gone through. Because actually, I think you're happier now than you were in those days. But actually, watching you go through that pain has actually almost been like a journey to find contentment or find yourself. I admit it sounds a bit deep, but it has been quite interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, should I have taken the jump years ago? Yes. Chris, you know them better than mine. I'm not going to reel them off, but umpteen names across the sort of hotel and across the catering world that good people that have gone off and done their own little businesses and done really well from it in the early days and kept at it. Should I have done that? Yeah, I should have done. That's I sort of stuck myself into that. In the nicest sense, which I don't ever regret, I sort of fell into the VC world, which I thoroughly enjoyed, but I also fell into the sporting world that I really did love. As much of a pain that it was a very enjoyable job, up and down the country, looking after sports stadiums and so on and so forth. But again, that was a business that we diversed and built elsewhere.
There's a lovely story about you, because actually what people don't realize is just how passionate you are, because you really do live this, don't you? Because there's a lovely story about someone who will remain nameless who told me that his first meeting with you, you ended up having a row with him. You probably know who I'm talking about. But actually the lovely thing behind it is 2 days later you apologized to him, and actually he apologized to you because he was being a twit. But actually he could trust you, because actually he knew you were being genuine.
Well, I suppose if people want to class it as a downfall for me, is I don't suffer fools. I never have done. And I do have a fairly sort of strong opinion, but at the same time, I quite like people telling me whether they think things are different. And I think because you learn from that. If you think you're always right the whole time, then you're just a leader with no real destiny. I think you've got to embrace everything that's going on and understand from other people how you can make things better. I mean, I get a bit feisty. I'm sure if you phoned Barry today and said, "I take it you're enjoying this journey with Adam," he'd give you he'd give you a lot of bleeps. But he and I have got on really well. He puts up with me, and vice versa, and we know when we're both upsetting one another, because that sort of thing happens. I think in life, if you're not genuine to yourself, and you're not open with people, then you're just trying to portray something you're never going to be. And I always found, which I quite liked, was that people saw me from what I was from the inside, and also from a client perspective, people saw me for what I was as well. And I never changed. And I have had client meetings that haven't gone that well, or I've been not completely satisfied with, and it's not ended well. But then we've always gone back and then sort of relighted it. And sometimes you need that sort of little bit of tension to make things happen.
Oh, look, Adam, it's been great talking to you this morning. Thank you. And I have no doubt you'll make this a great success. So I wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed.
Cheers, Chris. Thanks.